in one case scenario, I have at least the opportunity or chance that my life will change. If you don't do something out of fear, the worst thing that can happen is that your life stays exactly the same as it is. Hello, my name is Faith Willington. I think I've decided I'm going to name this series Unsolicited with your little sister Faith, because I would call myself a big sister, but I'm actually not a big sister, so it feels more appropriate for me to call it Unsolicited Advice with your little sister Faith. But today, I wanted to talk about fear, which is something that seems to be a consistent theme of my life, of how I overcome it, how I battle through it, and more recently, why I've been falling in love with it. For me, I remember watching the first Dune last year, and the mom in the movie says something that I thought was really powerful, which is fear is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings obliteration.
It's a pretty common quote, I believe, from the series, but for me it just resonated because it's just so true. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently, mainly around finances and how that pertains to womanhood, but one thing that one of the speakers in this podcast I've been listening to, called The Balanced Black Girl, said was that working hard doesn't make you money, risk does. And I think that is so true with everything in life. In order to get things that you want, it's not necessarily working hard and taking the most consistent or straightforward way. Sometimes it's about doing things that other people haven't done yet, and betting on yourself, more importantly, to get those things. I think doing things or not doing things out of fear is one of the worst things that you can do for yourself. I feel like how I was brought up was almost in this fearful mindset of, if you don't work, if you don't go to school, if you don't go to college, if you don't go into the military, then you are going to end up broke and homeless. And that is true to an extent, but I also think that not having a clear plan on what you're doing in life is also okay. And sometimes you have to be your own blueprint in order to get the vision in life that you want, not the vision that someone else wants. For the past 2 or so years, I feel like I've been in this rut, and I didn't understand how I got there. I felt like, and I know I had done all the correct steps and things I needed to do prior to going into college to have the best college experience that I could have had, but I still was in this rut, mostly because of my fear mindset. I was really scared of going into debt, which is a valid concern, but it also prevented me from having and rewarding myself with all of my hard work, because I didn't want to put my family or myself into debt. And I think that is a good reason to not want to go to college, and I have other reasons aside from that. And I did end up going to college, by the way. I'm in college at the moment, but I ended up going to community college and then transferring to my state university, which I'm pretty sure at one point I said I would never ever go to. So that's not only humbling and embarrassing for me, but in doing that, even though it was something that I did out of fear, I did find a new release and freedom, because I was no longer this person I felt that I needed to be. I tended to do a lot of things in high school out of optics, like the clubs that I joined, the things that I was into, the internships or interests that I said I had, was mainly just so that it could look good on a resume and I could be incredibly hireable. However, none of it was very fulfilling. And so once I found myself in this situation where I'm, 2 years into college, was previously in community college, not a lot of extracurriculars, not a lot of internships. It kind of is putting me in a position where, well, I could work my way up to build this image of this person who is incredibly hireable and is doing all those things and checking all those boxes. Or I could try to make my own path and do something else. And that's why I'm doing this, because I'm just trying to do something else. I'm not 100% sure it's going to work out, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it's so much better to say that you did something than to say that you didn't do something. Because in one case scenario, I have at least the opportunity or chance that my life will change. If you don't do something out of fear, the worst thing that can happen is that your life stays exactly the same as it is. You know what I mean? Like, you're not even giving yourself the chance to even potentially have a different life for yourself. Which is why I think fear is something I'm recently truly falling in love with, because it is a clear indicator that this is my comfort zone. The moment I feel fear, I'm pushing it. And on the other side of that is success and growth. And that's exactly what I want. So as long as I can overcome this fear and I can do the thing and I can see the way through, then I'm growing. And that's how I've kind of learned to associate fear with success and growth, which is something positive. One of my favorite sayings, now that we're on the topic, is every obstacle is an opportunity for growth, which I think is 100% true. It's how I also tend to see things on a more optimistic note 90% of the time. I guess I could talk a bit about like different types of fear and my views on them. So first I would say is fear of failure. This is something that I've constantly trying to overcome. Fear of failure is valid. You don't want to set yourself up for something or get high expectations only for them to not be met. However, it's just, to me, it's really logical. If you don't at least give yourself the chance to fail, then you're not giving yourself the chance to succeed either. There's also, I think, the fear of hard work, which is something that I feel like I've struggled with a lot. Hard work, I think, is actually not that hard. I know it's easier said than done, but I often think people hype things up in their head and exaggerate them in order to compensate for the fact that they haven't done it yet. And humans are very egotistical beings. Anytime we say something we do everything in we power to make it so. So if we're saying that something is hard, then we're going to make it hard just so that we don't have to admit that we're wrong, and we're proving to ourselves that we are smart and intellectual. Whereas if you do the exact opposite thing, that this is something that is easy, then you're pushing yourself to make something that may previously have been a challenge to you, something that is actually accessible, and therefore you're creating zero boundary between that thing that you want and yourself. And then the last thing is a fear of success, which I thought was a very interesting concept that I came across this past week. Fear of success is when you do all the work, you're pretty much at the finish line, and then you just don't do that last thing because you're scared of what this new level may look like. So an example would be, for me, I'll take a personal one. I was a pretty intense student in high school and was constantly fatigued and burnt out. And then when it came to college applications, I didn't even apply to most of the schools that were in my dream school list, just because I knew that they were a lot harder and selective. So it was both a fear of rejection and also a fear of having to be pushed once again outside of my comfort zone if I were to even get into those schools. And I don't necessarily, of course I regret it just because I limited myself from an opportunity, but it's not something that I look back on and am mad at myself for, because I think holding resentment for yourself is very unproductive, and it just prevents you from making mistakes and moving on from them in the future. I think resentment towards yourself limits your desire to do things and try new things because you're even more afraid of failing and making a mistake and then creating that resentment for yourself again. So that's why I don't hold any personal resentment towards myself, and also just because I love myself and I love my past self and I love my future self, because it's all me, you know, just in different forms. So yeah, I think that's about the end of this video. I really hope that some things resonated with you. I tried a new setup today also that I really like. I think it looks much more aesthetically pleasing, and I'm excited to see how this video comes together. Thank you guys for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.